So how do we get these zodiac signs? Where do they actually come from? What is the astronomy? And this is really important, of course, because this is something that is very widely misunderstood. As you've likely, seen one of the NASA articles that comes out every now and then that says, oh, the constellations have shifted, and so all astrologers are insane. Well, you're going to learn today what NASA scientists try not to learn themselves. And so I have a little animation here. Now, before we get to the animation, actually, let's talk about the nature of the Earth and the Sun. So this is an old map of the world, and this is a cool map, even though it's incomplete, obviously. This must be several centuries old. What it shows on this map is the plane of the ecliptic, which is this line right here. And what this plane of the ecliptic shows is the movement of the sun in its alignment with the Earth. This plane of the ecliptic is where the zodiac comes from. I should say the tropical zodiac, which is what we're talking about today. This line here is called the Tropic of Cancer. This is when the sun's incoming rays is lined with the Tropic of Cancer. This is the summer solstice. When the sun is at this point, the sun enters the sign of Cancer. This line here is called the Tropic of Capricorn. This line is where the sun's incoming rays are most directly aligned with this line. We have the winter solstice. And this is the moment the sun enters the sign of Capricorn. So understand, the zodiac, the tropical zodiac, comes from the relationship between the sun and the earth and is related to the seasons. Now, we can take this same path of the ecliptic, and now we're going to take the zodiac signs and overlay them. And we can track the movements of the sun throughout the year, beginning with the spring equinox. The spring equinox is going to be, I got another animation too. Okay, here we go. So the spring equinox is going to be when the sun's rays are aligned with the equator. This is the moment the sun enters the sign of Aries in March, spring equinox. Then Taurus season comes in April. Gemini season comes in May. And then we have the summer solstice. Oh, it's going the wrong way. This is when the sun's incoming rays is aligned with the Tropic of Cancer. At this exact moment, the sun enters the sign of Cancer. Moving forward, sun goes into Leo in July, moves into Virgo in August. Now, these cardinal points, again, are determined by the equinoxes. Aries and Libra are the equinox points. Cancer and Capricorn are the solstice points. This is what determines the zodiac. These four cardinal points, when they are divided evenly into threes, is how we get the 12 zodiac signs. So here we have the fall equinox, symbolized by the sign of Libra. And as you look at the glyph of Libra here, what does this glyph look like? This glyph itself is the symbol of the sun on the horizon. It is the symbol of even day and night. And what the zodiac sign of Libra fundamentally represents is balance, harmony, equality, justice. Very, very Libran souls are all about all of the above. They can be very artistic, very collaborative social butterflies. So again, the symbol is actually shown in nature. The zodiac signs are not a man-made system. They come directly from the language that is spoken through the movements of nature itself. So in September, we have this point where the sun's incoming rays is again aligned with the equator, just like during the spring equinox. And this is when the sun enters the sign of Libra, moves into Scorpio in October, Halloween time, moves into Sagittarius in November, Christmas time. And then we have our winter solstice. And again, This is when the sun's incoming rays is aligned with the Tropic of Capricorn. Now, obviously what this means is if you live in Australia and if you're at the southern hemisphere of the globe, then this is when you experience summer. This is the summer solstice in the south, south of the equator. When the north is having a summer solstice, the south is having a winter solstice. And it's because of the tilt of the earth as it rotates around the sun, creating these seasons and creating the path of the ecliptic, which creates the 12 zodiac signs. So this is it. This is the zodiac. Aquarius begins in January, we move into Pisces in February, and then we begin all over again during the spring equinox in March. And so again, equinoxes means the sun's incoming rays are directly aligned with the equator. Solstice means the sun's incoming rays directly aligned with either the Tropic of Cancer or Capricorn. Now, it should be said, when we are having a summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, this is the summer solstice up north. In Australia, they're celebrating the winter solstice. But the sun is always entering the sign of Cancer, irrelevant of where you are on the planet. So during the summer solstice, this is in Australia, this is the moment that the sun enters the sign of Capricorn. I hope that makes sense. Okay. All right. Okay, where are we now? Oh yes, the Julian calendar. That brings us to the Julian calendar itself. So let's just take a look at this wheel here. Obviously, the Julian calendar is originally based off of these natural rhythms and movements. Why? Because a year is one Earth rotation around the sun. Now, it should be said also from Earth's perspective, of course, the Earth doesn't appear to be moving around the sun, but the sun appears to be moving. And so from our perspective on Earth, when the sun is at its highest point during the summertime in the northern hemisphere, this is the summer solstice. So we can also look at it from the perspective as when the sun's at its highest point and we get the most direct sunlight. Of course, this is the summer solstice, and vice versa during the winter solstice. Every year, the sun goes a full 360 degrees around the wheel. And so why do you think we have roughly 360 days in a year? 360 degrees in a wheel. Why did we choose that number? This is the amount of Earth rotations roughly in a year. And it becomes very rough with the Julian calendar, of course, because the Julian calendar is no longer based off of nature. It's just a rough approximation. That way we can have, easily communicated time and all these things. That's where humanity has been for the last couple centuries. How are we all going to share the same date across the whole world, And so we have leap years to make sure that everything's even and stays on track. But it's not necessarily correlated with nature. Now, how many months do we have in a year? We have 12 months, of course, correlating with the 12 seasons, the 12 zodiac signs. How many digits do you see on an analog clock? 12. How many Roman numerals do we have? 12. These things come fundamentally from nature. Now, every year, we have 12 lunar rotations, approximately. And so why is it called a month? Because a month is approximately one moon rotation. Every month, the moon goes full circle through all the zodiac signs, which we'll take a look at in just a moment. And so every month, the moon goes full circle, and the sun goes through approximately one zodiacal season. And this is why usually we have one new moon in its sign, and then a full moon usually in the opposite sign. And this, of course, can change depending on how things line up. But usually, one new moon in the sign, one full moon in the opposite sign, because we have this alignment of one lunar rotation per every sun transiting through one zodiac sign. Now, every month has approximately 4 weeks. Why is this? Because every week, every 7 days, the moon moves approximately 1/4 of a cycle. So on week 1, we have new moon. A week later, we have the first quarter square moon, half moon. 2 weeks after the new moon is a full moon. 2 weeks. 3 weeks after, we have the third quarter, half moon. And then 4 weeks, we come full circle. So 4 weeks is this moon cycle divided into quarters. Every month is 1 lunar rotation. Every week is about 1/4 of a lunar rotation. Why do we have 7 days? In traditional astrology, there were 7 planets before Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto were discovered. And the planets were the 2 luminaries, Sun and Moon, plus Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, Saturn. This is where the 7 weeks, the 7 days of the week come from. So Sunday, obviously, Sun's day. Monday is the moon's day. Tuesday is correlated to Mars. Wednesday is Mercury's day. Thursday, Thor, Jupiter's day. Friday is Venus's day. And of course, Saturday is Saturn's day. So all of these aspects of the Julian calendar align with the zodiac, the wheel, and the 12 zodiac signs. Why are there approximately 30 days in every month? How many degrees are there when we divide 360 by 12? There's 30 degrees per each zodiac sign. This means that every day the sun is going to transit 1 degree through each sign. Okay? All right, so let's look at the moon now. And this is a really, really great way to come into and learn astrology because you can see it, you know. You can see when it's a half moon. And what does that symbolize? Square. What does a full moon symbolize? Opposition. Why? Because the sun is opposite to the moon and the earth is in between. So here's a new moon. On this picture, we're going to look at the earth in its relationship to the moon and the sun. So when the moon is in between the sun and the earth, we have a new moon. Why? Because we can't see it. There's no light illuminating the moon that we can see. And fascinating thing about the moon is we can only ever see one side of it. It rotates at the same time that it rotates its face at the same time that it rotates around the earth. It's really amazing. So we only see the one side of the moon. And there's what's called the dark side of the moon that we never see. Okay? Crescent moon. 45 degrees. When the moon moves 45 degrees in front of the sun, this is a crescent moon. And so on this side of this image here, we're showing the relationship of the moon to the sun. The sun is going to remain in a static point right here. And the moon is going to move 360 degrees around the chart. And you can look at any chart and look at the relationship between the sun and the moon and measure the degrees between them. And you will know what phase the moon was in this chart. So 45 degrees of the moon in front of the sun is a crescent moon. When we come to the 90-degree point right here, this is when we get our half moon. Look at this image right here, right? It's like we can see half of the moon's face is illuminated. When we move another 45 degrees forward, this is when we enter the gibbous moon. Then we get our full moon, when the moon is on the other side of the earth, being fully illuminated by the sun. Now, the only time this isn't going to happen, where the moon is fully illuminated, is when we have eclipses, of course. And that means that the earth is blocking out the moon, for example, during a lunar eclipse. Or when the moon is in front of the sun, we can have a solar eclipse. Solar eclipse is always a new moon. Lunar eclipse is always a full moon. Now, we're not talking about eclipses in this workshop, but what an eclipse means is it deals with the ecliptic. When the path of the moon's orbit aligns with the path of the ecliptic, this is what creates eclipses. One way to look at eclipses in the birth chart, and I'm just going to say this quickly, is the moon's nodes itself are the points where the moon's orbit intersects the ecliptic. That means that you can look at a birth chart And if there is a new moon or a full moon within 10 degrees of the moon's nodes, called Rahu and Ketu in Vedic astrology, this means that there was either a solar or a lunar eclipse at the time of that birth chart. Okay? So lunar phases is when we divide the wheel into 8, 45 degrees. There are 8 lunar phases. So we're just quickly blowing through these so you can get a visual here. Third quarter square, okay? Half of the moon is illuminated by the sun, okay? Balsamic moon. This is when we're starting to get the moon is into a sliver fingernail, okay? And this is when we're dissolving. The moon is returning to the sun. Planets always move counterclockwise around the chart unless they are retrograde. So now the moon has come all the way around and is returning to the sun, beginning a new phase. So the balsamic moon phase is the final lunar phase. Okay? So here again is a graphic, and we're correlating the zodiac signs, correlates with the houses. So Aries is the first house, Taurus is the second house, so on and so forth. 0 degrees is the 0 degree conjunction. 90 degrees is the square. 180 degrees is the opposition. Full moon, the sign of Libra, the 7th house. All of these archetypes and these symbols correlate. Why? Because it's all the same fundamental pattern that's being exposed here by the zodiac. All of these things is the same fundamental pattern of this movement. Okay, so this is everything, again, the creation. Now we can look at the seasons. Again, this is going to be another demonstration. What creates the seasons is the fact that the Earth is tilted 23.5 degrees and it spins on this tilt as it moves around the Earth. This is what creates the 4 seasons. So we bring the sun into the mix. And here again is our zodiac signs. When the northern part of the Earth is most facing the sun, the sun is in the sign of Cancer. Okay. So here is our season. Here's our year. I'm sorry. When we get to the equinox point, this is when the sun is in Libra. Equal day, equal night. Winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, summer solstice in the southern hemisphere is when the sun enters the sign of Capricorn. When we have the longest night in the northern hemisphere, the day of longest night is the day the sun enters the sign of Capricorn. And then the spring equinox, even day and night, okay? So you see again, this is the zodiac. The zodiac is directly correlated to the seasons. I have another graphic to look at the same exact dynamic. If I can find it. Okay, no, this isn't it. Okay, well, yeah, let's look at this. Now, what we're doing here is I just brought in the moon. And so what we're viewing right here is that the moon is going to go through one full rotation every time the sun goes through one sign. And so this is how the tropical zodiac works if we're looking at the solar system from a heliocentric perspective, okay? Sun-centered perspective, as it is in our reality, as it is in the universe. This is what the zodiac is. So the sun's in Aries, now Taurus, now Gemini, okay? The zodiac is always fixed because the seasons are fixed. It does not change. So I'm sorry, NASA, the movement of the constellations doesn't say anything. Oh, wait, besides the fact that astrologers consider that movement of the constellations. Why? Because the stars move. That's called precession. The zodiac signs don't move. That means that astrologers can also track the movement of the stars through the zodiac signs. And this is how astrologers determine the various ages. The stars generally move 30 degrees every 2,000 years. That precession is very well known about by astrologers, and this is how we determine these 2,000-year period ages. Now, looking at this same graphic, let's bring in Mercury. Okay, so Mercury is obviously closer to the sun than the Earth. And the reason why I made this animation here, and it's just an example, obviously this isn't going to be totally accurate, apart from the fact that the movement of the Earth and the Mercury will be accurate. Okay, Mercury goes retrograde 3 times every year and orbits around 4 times per each Earth orbit. Now, the reason I'm showing this visual is to understand the nature of retrogrades. Okay, retrogrades do not actually mean that a planet turns backwards in our solar system, obviously. Mercury is moving counterclockwise, Earth is moving counterclockwise around the sun. All of the planets are always moving around the sun counterclockwise on that magical plane of the ecliptic. You can imagine why the ecliptic is going to be so important in astrology. This is the zodiac, is the ecliptic, right? And so, of course, this one single plane that everything is revolving around is going to be very important in astrology. Now look at Mercury and in his relationship to the signs. And what we can see is that every time Mercury becomes in between the sun and the earth, we're going to experience a Mercury retrograde. So look at Mercury now. Mercury stationing retrograde back into Aquarius, okay? Moving forward, stations retrograde back into Taurus, direct back into Gemini, comes full circle, okay? In Libra, stations retrograde, back into Virgo, direct, back into Libra, Scorpio, Sag, Capricorn, Aquarius, stationing retrograde in Aquarius, back into Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, stationing retrograde in Gemini, back into Taurus, back into Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, okay? So this is what creates retrograde motions. What does retrograde mean in astrology, in the birth chart? Whenever a planet is retrograde, it becomes more powerful, it is more introverted, and it is fundamentally about changing how that dynamic typically exists in society. So someone with Mercury retrograde, for example, may be more introverted, speak less, and think differently, think uniquely, think very brilliantly, continuously mulling things over in their head. Mars retrograde does things differently, is always changing what they're doing, can be very busy, very active, powerful Martian energy. Venus retrograde is really looking at relationships and values, changing relationships and values in order to discover a unique value system that may be different than the commonplace value system in the world, so on and so forth. So again, a retrograde planet is more powerful, more introverted, and it's more unique. It's breaking away from the stereotypical patterns of how those planets normally function. Okay. So again, here's our 4 cardinal directions correlated to 4 fundamental aspects. I don't know why this says 275. That should definitely be 180 though. Here are the main aspects in astrology. Sextile, 60 degrees. Square, 90 degrees. Trine, 120 degrees. Quincunx, 150 degrees. Opposition, 180 degrees. Again, all of these will also correlate to different zodiac signs. We can overlay the same zodiac signs into the chart. And look at that. The quincunx is correlated to Virgo and Scorpio. Very, very intense aspect. Scorpio and Virgo can be very challenging, intense signs. Fundamental changing of directions, again, correlates with the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. Very, very fiery, spontaneous, quick-moving signs, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, dealing with the trine. Okay, so you don't have to know all of this. The purpose of me sharing this is to simply reveal the underlying nature that shows how this fundamental pattern of zodiac, which is the pattern of life on Earth as we know it. It might be said that the Fibonacci sequence is the zodiac, okay? This is the fundamental building blocks of nature and reality as we know it. So nature, what are these natural laws? Astrology is all about revealing natural laws because, again, it's not a man-made system. It's a system that comes out of nature. And so we're going to review some of these basic fundamental natural laws that are inherent within everything in the creation. And these particular rules are coming from what is considered the ancient text called the Kybalion. Okay? The Kybalion was written by three anonymous authors called the Three Initiates, and it is said to be the wisdom of Hermes Trismegistus, otherwise known as Thoth in the ancient Egyptians. He was worshipped as a god, but Hermes Trismegistus was an actual historical person. He was a master astrologer. He's considered one of the earliest known astrologers. Okay, so this is wisdom coming straight from Hermes, Mercury, the god of wisdom. The first natural law that we'll talk about is called the principle of correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. This law of nature fundamentally acknowledges a harmony and a balance within everything. And of course, we're talking about astrology, which deals with the micro and the macrocosm. So the understanding here is, oh, look at our birth chart and all of these symbols of who we are as a human being on the planet. And what are we looking to? Above, the nature of the planets themselves is directly connected to the nature of what we are experiencing in this microcosm called the Earth. It's like how we can move to a cellular level and we start to notice these patterns repeat. The nature of reality is a fractal pattern. And what a fractal pattern means is a self-similar shape within a self-similar shape within a self-similar shape within a self-similar shape going on and on forever. So our connection to the planets is that, again, we're made out of the same fundamental building blocks, the archetypes. This is what Carl Sagan said, we're made out of star stuff. Well, if we wanted to take it to another dimension, we're made out of archetypal stuff. We're made out of the stuff of the collective unconsciousness. This also is the makeup of our entire reality. That connection between the macrocosm and the microcosm, Carl Jung coined as synchronicity. And this is an important point in astrology, and different astrologers have different opinions. My own opinion is that the planets do not cause our experience on this earth, and our human interactions don't cause the movements of the planets, which are obviously very, very predictable, which is why astrologers can make forecasts for what's going to happen centuries from now, because we know where the planets will be centuries from now. Unless an asteroid smacks them, something could happen. The nature of reality could change. But this is the nature of reality of Earth as we know it, is the zodiac, and it is predictable. The sun's movements are predictable and have been for as long as we can remember. Synchronicity does not mean that one causes the next, but there is a mysterious, inconceivable reflection. As we are experiencing this particular story on this dimension, it might be said that the gods, which are the fundamental archetypes, are experiencing a similar story on their own dimension. Okay, so again, you understand the nature of fractals. Self-similar shape inside self-similar shape inside self-similar shape. We are made of the gods, and the gods are made of us. The same way the cells in our bodies can be said to be individual functioning life forms that are a part of something that is bigger than themselves. We are connected to this galaxy, this solar system, which is something bigger than ourselves. And when something happens on the macrocosm, it therefore directly is connected to our experience on the microcosm. As above, so below, as within, so without. Now, the next law that we'll take a look at is called the principle of vibration. What does this mean? Nothing rests. Everything moves, vibrates, circles, cycles. The one thing that can be said to rest is the only thing that is not in the manifest creation, which is the source of all creation itself, consciousness. Consciousness is steady. Consciousness might be said to be moving at an inconceivably fast vibration, however you want to speculate it. But everything that is born, everything that exists, and everything in our reality vibrates. Everything moves, everything has a lifetime. Many of these natural laws that have been known about by alchemists and hermetics for thousands of years are now being discovered by physicists, and scientists, such as the great scientist Albert Einstein, who was a great pioneer of discovering natural laws, such as the natural law that things are not created or destroyed. They change. Nothing rests. Everything changes. The principle of polarity. Everything in the creation is dual. Everything has an opposite. All manifest things have two poles. This becomes extremely important in practicing astrology. And again, if we want to pull up our zodiac wheel here, let's see if I can find a blank one. This is very evident in looking at zodiac signs. Aries is opposite to Libra. They are fundamentally polar opposites, which means that poles are always connected. Really, the 12 zodiac signs can be reduced to 6 polarities, and they're always going to be opposite to one another, and they always really depend on one another, as there cannot be shadow without light. This is the nature of duality. There must be duality in order to experience anything. Our senses must have duality in order to process what sensual information is coming to us. We don't just hear sounds, we hear silence. The silence is what allows there to be vibration and rhythm and sounds. The space between our words is what allows us to communicate. Again, light and shadow ultimately depend on one another. Inside, outside, good and evil. Everything is a duality, and all dual poles are connected. So looking at the wheel of the zodiac here, Aries, again, the first sign of the zodiac, about individuality, initiation, birthing. And what are Aries stereotypically known for? Going my own way, being a leader, even being potentially brash and, self-autonomous, And the negative potential of too much Aries is becoming arrogant. I'm going to go in my own direction, and who cares about everybody else? My way or the highway. Is too much Aries that's out of balance with Libra, which is, of course, the exact opposite. Libra is, let's make sure everybody's okay, and let's make sure everything's polite and nice and harmonious and balanced, and everybody is included, is Libra. And too much Libra. What if we have too much Libra that's out of balance with Aries? Now I'm forgetting my own desires. I'm self-sacrificing. I'm getting shoved under. I'm just doing what I need to for approval. And so the high octave of either sign, of any sign, the high octave potential of any sign requires balance. Balance and good health, balance and harmony, balance and, being able to continuously improve are all one and the same. I thought I was going somewhere with that. I guess not. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so to balance any sign, you need to balance the opposite sign. The high octave of any sign will be in balance with the other. So for example, what's high octave Aries? It's not just the arrogant asshole who goes in their own direction. High octave Aries is the knight in shining armor. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be self-autonomous. I'm going to be protective and defensive, but I'm going to use all of that to honor and preserve justice and equality. Libra. And Libra, the high octave of Libra, I'm going to create, I'm going to collaborate, I'm going to share. And oftentimes, the people who refrain from being in leadership, they're not instinctually putting themselves first, they care about everybody, they want everybody to be included. What should those people be doing? They should be leading. They should be the president of the United States. Libra deals a lot with politics and ruling the world, So you get what I'm saying. With that nature, people need to become leaders and stand up and be that knight in shining armor. I hope this is all making sense so far. Let's go back to our laws of nature, natural laws. Principle of rhythm. This is one of my favorites. Why? Because everything dances in the creation. What's going on here? Did my PowerPoint freeze? Okay, here we go. Everything is divine dance. This is called Leela in Sanskrit, divine dance, play, movement. So there's always a rhythm and a movement between poles, you know. We don't go new moon, full moon, like a light bulb turning on and off and turning on and off, right? Nothing in the creation is like this. There's always a dance. There's always a movement. All things swing back and forth like a pendulum. New moon, full moon. Summer solstice, winter solstice. New day, nighttime. Golden age, dark age. Matriarchy, patriarchy. Everything in the creation is a part of this divine dance. And again, astrology is the study of these cycles, of this dance. It is the study of these movements. It is the study of this nature. Now, it should also be said before I forget, when all the planets are going around the chart and they all move counterclockwise around the sun unless they're moving retrograde, right? This is a cycle, this is a circle, and every single time the planets are going around the chart, we are learning, we are growing, we are evolving, and we're having particular experiences depending on the meanings of those cycles and where they are in correlation to one another. Now, we all have free will. That's a natural law. We have the freedom to cooperate with evolution or to try and deny it, shove it under, and resist evolution. Ultimately, when we resist evolution, this is what creates samsara. In Buddhism, samsara is the endless pattern of suffering, repeating suffering again and again and again without learning or growing or understanding why, is essentially hell. This is suffering, okay? But as the planets are cycling around the sun, there's evolutionary opportunities for us to learn and grow. And when we use our free will to align with our own hearts and soul's desires, these planets are not just cycling around endlessly forever. There is an upward spiral. And when we track the sun's movement around the galactic center, because of course the sun is not a steady point as well, we notice that the planets are actually spiraling, following the sun as it's moving around the galactic center. And so there's this upward evolution, always improving, always evolving. Reality gets better and better and better when we align with the seasons, the cycles, and the nature of life that encourages us to step into this rhythm, this divine dance. And when we find alignment with this rhythm and dance, life becomes a lot easier in many respects. It's not that life it becomes easy. We still have challenges. It can still be very difficult. But we have an understanding as to why. We have a map, and we have a connection to the bigger picture. And this is why before astrology, I personally was just lost. I had no idea what anything was going on. And now I know astrology. And does that mean that my life is easy and perfect and I have everything figured out? Hell no. But I have a pretty good understanding of what's going on beneath the surface. And that extra awareness can be very encouraging. And knowing that we are where we are meant to be. This is the season and cycle for change. This is where you are in your soul's evolution. This is a time for shifting. And knowing that that's where we are, connected to something that is bigger than ourselves, that's some of the most powerful potential healing that can come through astrology. Besides just understanding our own nature to a very deep degree that can be extremely illuminating. The principle of cause and effect. Again, nothing in reality is created or destroyed, it only changes. And with every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. This law of nature is Saturn. This is karma. Karma does not mean we're being punished for the bad things we did in our lives, past lives, or we're being rewarded by the good things that we did in our past lives. Karma is simply, with every action, there is an equal and opposite response. It is nature. It is reality. It isn't any more personal or mean than that. Also, as a quick aside, I think it's really important, since we're talking about this law of karma, to explain that this is not the only law or the thing in effect in our reality. Everything in reality is not simply cause and effect like everything's a pinball machine. There is also what is called evolutionary necessity, which can also be revealed in the birth chart. And to really understand this deeper, wisdom of astrology, you want to study evolutionary astrology that was pioneered by Jeffrey Wolf Green. This understanding of evolutionary necessity means that we may go through experiences that can even be potentially difficult or challenging, but does that mean that it is our past karma coming full circle and we're just having to plow through it? No. We may go through particular experiences because our soul actually desires to have these experiences to learn and grow. In other words, we're not just reaping the pleasure or the pain of our past actions. Our soul's desire to evolve through particular experiences also creates our experience in life. And so if someone falls on the sidewalk, we don't look at them and say, oh, it's their karma. There's a lot more that goes into reality than just that. And that very basic everything is karma perspective can very easily lead into spiritual arrogance or shut down the heart to compassion. The principle of gender. Everything in the creation has a gender. Does that mean sexual gender? No. It means energetic gender, the feminine and the masculine. Again, if everything in the creation has two poles, if everything in the creation is dual in nature, the fundamental duality of everything is what we are calling the masculine and the feminine. Okay, so the feminine is water and earth, elementally. And the masculine is air and fire, elementally. Okay, these basic genders are the building blocks of all creation. And again, water and earth, more receptive. Air and fire, more extroverted. So let's look at these definitions from the Kabbalion. The feminine principle is always in the direction, always in the direction of receiving impressions and has much more varied field of operation than the masculine. Much more complex what's inside of us than what's measurable and discernible outside, right? Like the unconsciousness, like water, Scorpio. The feminine conducts the work of generating new thoughts, concepts, and ideas. The imagination, Pisces, water sign. The masculine principle is always in the direction of giving out or expressing the contents of the will, such as the fire signs, dealing with willpower, initiation, outer expression. It is said that there must be a balance in those two forces. Without the feminine, the masculine is apt to act without restraint, order, or reason, resulting in chaos. The feminine alone, on the other hand, is apt to constantly reflect and fail to actually do anything, resulting in stagnation, like stagnant water, for example. With both the masculine and the feminine working in conjunction, there is a thoughtful action that breeds success, which points out that both the feminine and the masculine fulfill one another. So what is the goal here? It's always about balance. And balance in the birth chart is how we get to the high octave potential of our soul's desires. One of the polarities that this is most apparent in the birth chart is the moon's nodes. And oftentimes it's said that there's a one-way direction into the north node. That's the future. The south node's the past. This is not necessarily the case. It can become much more complicated than that with so many rules involved in astrology. And again, you want to look at evolutionary astrology if you want the deep schooling and many years of appreciating all the different dynamics that can show up. What I'm getting to is the moon's nodes is really another place of balancing polarity. If your north node's in Libra, again, that doesn't mean you're going to forget your individuality. You need to be an individual in order to bring balance and harmony to the world. If your north node's in Aries, that doesn't mean you're going to be isolated and alone for the rest of your life. You're bringing in many creative collaborative skills that you can initiate into new ways, so on and so forth. So the masculine, the feminine are always seeking balance. The elements are always seeking balance. Our own lives, our own birth charts are always seeking balance. And when we find that balance, this is when our potential can become revealed and in ever more easy and effortless ways as we tune into the nature and the balance of life.